What's up, guys? Got a good subject today. I got to ask who the most athletic fighter I've ever trained with was. And we're talking about MMA, of course. I've trained with a bunch of world-class boxers and kickboxers and stuff as well. Been to Thailand, been to Holland. I've been around. But by far, probably for mixed martial arts, the most athletic fighter I've ever trained with was Johny Hendricks. Johny Hendricks was a straight up freak athlete, and I don't think people realize how athletic he was. And I think that if you go back and look at the GSP fight, I guess that kind of shows how athletic he really was. It didn't surprise me at all that he arguably beat GSP as athletic as Johny Hendricks was. And I didn't train with Johny Hendricks all the time. I wasn't on Team Takedown, the team he was with, but they were in the same city as me, and I would leave and do my training camps out of state, but I would train here for the rest of the time I was in the UFC. I would train here at home in Texas. So I did about 6 months where I would do my training camp at, and I did about 6 months a year here in Texas. And in the off times, I would train with Johny Hendricks and his Team Takedown some. And the fast twitch muscles of this guy is something that just any fighter wishes they had. When I say fast twitch, I'm talking about, if you remember going back and watching the Martin Kampmann and John Fitch fights, how he just springs from halfway across the cage and just hits the dude. Like, I believe John Fitch, he knocked out with the overhand left, and he just looks like he had springs in his feet, right? That's kind of how it was with training with him. Like, the dude was very controlled, knew how to pull power, didn't try to knock out all of his teammates or anything like that. But man, his first step, like, I bet you Johny Hendricks could, I think I overheard somebody saying this, or him talking about it actually too, that he could run like a 4.340. Like, this dude's fast twitch muscles, from being athletic and probably also from shooting, being a two-time D1 national champion and, damn near Olympic level wrestler, the shooting, the ability that he developed over the years of fast twitch muscles just from thousands upon thousands of reps of shooting, I'm sure played a major factor in this. But this guy's fast twitch muscles were like similar, like you see, how you see MVP or like Horiguchi or Wonder Boy, these karate guys where they do techniques where they, like a reverse punch, where they can just spring from so far away and hit people from a distance you wouldn't even think of. Johny Hendricks could do that with the overhand left. Like, he could throw an overhand, just like chunk it, duck his head, not even looking, could hit you from a distance you wouldn't even think that someone that short could hit you, because he wasn't even tall. But just the springs in his feet, and obviously, his grappling was world class. Some of the best wrestling we've ever seen in the UFC, even though he really used it kind of in reverse. But he was so fast twitched that a lot of guys like Kampmann, like John Fitch, the guys that got knocked out by Johny Hendricks, people couldn't even engage with him. You couldn't even throw volume with Johny Hendricks because he was so fast twitch. When he was in his prime, he would make you pay for that. And definitely, in my opinion, and I've sparred some good athletes, and I've trained some good, really athletic people that have been in the UFC for years, and world champions, and he was by far, I've sparred some with Usman, I've sparred with Sadiq Youssef. It was one of my teammates for years. I've trained with a lot of different UFC fighters, and Johny Hendricks was more athletic than all of them. So I definitely see why he did so good against GSP and why he was able to become a world champion. I don't think I don't believe in the argument that USADA killed Johny Hendricks' career either. I also don't think that he was a big steroid user and that's what made him so special. I think that when his team here fell apart, the Team Takedown that he was signed to fell apart, I don't think he trained that hard anymore after that. I think that he's kind of was burned out from doing martial arts or wrestling and then MMA for so long. He just didn't want to do it anymore. But I definitely don't think it was USADA. I really don't. I'm talking, this guy was a freak athlete, and and didn't even train that hard in my opinion. Didn't train anywhere near as hard as I would have thought he would have to achieve these things. But I guess when you've been doing it your whole life, you have been training, right? You've been developing these skills and stuff like that. But I remember towards the end of his career, I would see him come in and he would spar. Like one time I went to go spar him, and he came in and didn't do a warm up, didn't do a cool down, just came in and sparred 3 5-minute rounds and left, and that was part of his training, And I would see him come in and do, he would come in and not shadow box, not warm up really, hit the pads 3 to 5 rounds, and then leave, and his cardio was playing tennis or doing something else that he wanted to do. So I just don't think at the end of his career that he was training as hard as he was when he was in his prime as being a champion. And I think he was training way less. So that was kind of why I think he ended up his career the way he did. And also he didn't want to cut weight anymore. I think he was just burned out, and I guess that's hard for everyone else to see that. But when you've been doing this stuff since you were 3 or 4 years old at his level, the high level he's been at his whole career, it makes sense why he was so burned out. But by far, Johny Hendricks was definitely probably the most athletic, well-rounded athlete that I've ever trained with in MMA for sure. So I hope that answers your question.